So I'm delighted to be talking to my old friend Fran Breen, who is in Nashville, Tennessee. He'll give us details as we go along. But we're talking because of the passing of a great musician, Nanci Griffith, and Fran, in his formative part of the career, played with Nanci Griffith. Just first of all, Fran, obviously emotionally, it's sad to see her go.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the great songwriter. And I think a lot of the songs just touched a nerve in, I think, in all of us, what I mean? Anybody that kind of came across Nancy. It was Philip Donnelly. It was the Heffernan brothers were putting on a TV show called The Sessions.
Right.
And the idea was to bring a lot of American artists and kind of, sprinkle it with some Irish artists. So the whole thing was Philip Donnelly was the musical director. So anyway, I got a call to do one of the shows with a girl called Nanci Griffith.
And this was being broadcast in Ireland.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I didn't know who she was from Adam. It was just kind of like, she came in with Mark O'Connor, Jerry Douglas. We did a rehearsal the day before. We did the show. It was hugely successful. Unbeknownst to us at the time, it was just kind of, all of a sudden it was like, God, who is this girl? And blah, blah, blah. And she had a great knack of telling stories.
Yes. Yes.
And that was a big, big part of her show. And I can remember, doing gigs, and I would hear people going, shh, shh, So trying to catch every word that she was kind of saying. What did she say? What did she say?
Yeah.
So anyway, so we did the show. The show was very successful, and it was a big launching pad for Nanci in Europe because she was known in America, but she wasn't that well known in America. So,
yes. And Fran, when you did the show and when it worked, did you kind of feel then, yes, this is a band?
Oh, it was great. Oh, it was great. I mean, there was just a great feeling. Philip Donnelly was on guitar. We had a bass player called Dinny Bigsby, who was out of Portland but lived in Nashville. We had James Hooker, ex-Amazing Rhythm Aces on keyboards, who also was a great singer and was a co-writer with Nanci on a couple of songs. So,
right.
I mean, when we got going, it was just like, the whole thing was, it was just a great vibe. It was
Really?
a great room. But I mean, theatres and all that.
Her big song in Ireland, of course, is From a Distance. Had that been out before this session or was it after? Or
No, I think that was the first time it kind of actually was heard.
right.
To my knowledge, because, that would have been my first introduction to Nancy. So,
Yes. So there you were a band. It clicked. What happened then? What did the management say? Hey, Fran, we want you to.
Yeah, they kind of, one of the managers said to me, he said, well, she really likes you. She'd like you in the band. And I said, oh, great. Well, there's my phone number, Of course, the phone numbers are them with the rotary phones,
Yes, yes.
And I kept looking at the phone and it never rang, So it must have been, I'd say it was probably close to a year after or 9 months. I get a phone call from her manager and he says, hey, look, we're going in to do a record in LA. Glyn Johns is going to produce it. We want you to come over and play on it. And I had just been talking to Mike Scott, and they were setting up a tour, the Water Boys. Yeah, so I kind of went home and I went, oh, God, this is kind of like, what am I going to do now? So I always wanted to record in America.
Yeah.
So Mike was very gracious and he kind of let me go, And I went to LA and met the great Glyn Johns and with these American players, and we did that record Storms.
Right.
So it was so from there on, I mean, I suppose that was the start, because once the record was mixed and ready to go and they started pushing it, then, it was time to let's start touring. So I was still living in Ireland, but that was kind of the start of the gigging with Nanci.
The experience in the studio, Fran, if it was me, I'd be terrified. I'd be nail biting. Was it okay?
I was terrified too. No, it was, but it was kind of, it was just a great experience, you know what I mean? And he was such a nice guy, you know. He was just he was very easygoing and really I was just chuffed to me
Yeah,
that here I was in America recording a record in America.
yeah.
It's great.
And how did Nancy get on with the musicians? Was she kind of above it a little bit, or did she kind of mess with the guys?
No, no, she was very humble. She was
Okay.
very humble. She would leave the song open to the musician's interpretation, but she would still hold on to the root of what she had written and composed. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Do you? Yeah.
She held on to the root of the song.
Okay. So she trusted Glyn Johns, and then you guys worked very closely with him and her.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful.
and in that case, sorry, Mark. And in that case, you would sometimes get more than what you were bargaining for in
Yeah.
regards to that. You would kind of get the icing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Sometimes artists would want total control, and they wouldn't really benefit
Yeah.
from a good producer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Musicians.
So did you go out on the road, Fran, in America?
We certainly did, Mark. We went all over America, and we were doing packing them out in Ireland. I couldn't believe it. I'd never seen such crowds.
Yeah.
To Ireland, you were doing like 3 weeks in Ireland, and then again maybe doing 4 weeks in England. I mean, so she was really kind of now flying high. And then she was they were working it in America, and it was the same thing.
Yeah.
We'd done a couple of records. I think I probably did. I think the last record I did with her was probably Other Voices, Other Rooms,
Okay.
which was kind of a more acoustic, Nancy singing other
People's songs, yeah.
songwriters.
So there was a period when it felt good. Did Nancy enjoy it? Did she enjoy the feeling of being
Yeah,
popular and doing gigs?
yeah, it was happening. She was I kind of will say that sometimes, and I've found this with an awful lot of artists, you're on one label. You know what I mean? It could be whoever it is.
Mm.
And then you're always going to be getting somebody in the label. Well, let's go and do this, or well, let's kind of do this. So at some points, you know what I mean, artists get pulled around a bit. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes they lose, or they find it hard to hold on to their own artistic integrity. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Here's a stupid question. Do you have a favorite piece that you recorded with her?
I have. Let's put it this way. I have favorite tracks that I like from some of the records I've done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, there's certain tracks. I mean, it's funny. Just yesterday, somebody had kind of texted me and said, "Hey, Fran, I'm just listening to that Storms record, which was the first record I did,
Yeah.
and they were asking me about a particular track." And I just kind of said, "Oh, I'll give that a listen." And I kind of went, "Wow, that sounds pretty cool." Because sometimes you walk away from something that
Yeah.
you've done and don't listen to it for years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's surprising that
Yeah.
how well it will stand up. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Fran, did you stay in touch with Nancy, or as is so often the case in America, when the band is over, you kind of just go off and do your own thing?
Well, I kind of, I mean, she would obviously still be doing her thing, but when I finished with Nancy, I went off with Lucinda Williams, and then I just kind of went on following my own path, so to speak. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I couldn't, that was done. We kind of basically said goodbye musically. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And fair enough. People want to change, and they want to, refresh. You know,
Yeah.
bring in new ideas or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have to say, they were great days. It was a great time. She was very kind. She was very benevolent. In actual fact, when we were moving to America, she bought a house in Nashville so that we could live in it. She furnished it, the whole thing. So,
Wow.
obviously when I came, I had a job for
Yeah.
working with her.
She must have liked your drumming, Fran.
Well, we got on well, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's how kind she was.
Yeah.
I think she even bought a box of Major cigarettes and left them on the mantelpiece because Rita smoke cigarettes.
Well, Fran,
Ah,
you're very good to remind us of what were obviously great times in your life. And thanks be to God, you're still well and kicking and doing some
I'm
gigs in
well a
America.
kicking. Mark, I just want to say that I can't get over. It blew me away the amount of good wishes and sentiments that have come from, in particular, anybody from Ireland, whether it be Europe, England, and America. It just blew me away. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
you just don't realize how touched.
How should touch people. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I just couldn't believe it. It's just kind of like I thought, and it's a great feeling to have been a part of it,
yeah,
or a part of it. Not, you know what I mean. Very gratifying, I must say. You know what I mean. I'm very happy for her, and if she was alive, it would have certainly have warmed her heart.